do one of these?
Pretty Good Parent podcast. Superpower, de-escalation, take one.
De-escalation.
Bring it down. Dan Nickel, Josh Emery. This is the Pretty Good Parent.
And it's our first episode, Joshua.
I mean, that's a big deal.
It's
a lot
the maiden voyage.
A lot of sleepless nights getting to this point.
Yeah. But so with this being our maiden voyage, the first one, what are we talking about today, Joshua?
Yeah, so today I just want to talk about maybe one of the most important, most applicable parenting skills there is, and that's the ability to de-escalate. So a lot of parent-child conflict, a lot of conflict in general with humans, is complicated by escalating energy, escalating noise in our heads and agendas. And learning how to turn that down and de-escalate is the superpower for all good relationships, for conflict resolution and resetting. And it's on high alert in the home. Like parents can be just as high as with kids, or we can let other people pull us up in terms of energy. So learning how to be aware and dial that down. Parents ask me all the time, like, how am I supposed to like not fight with my kid when they say or do this? And I'm like, oh, simple. We're going to talk energy. We're going to talk dial in your approach, and then imagining like gifting them like this ability to just calm down, even if you have to fake it, which works. And we'll get into that in a little bit. But de-escalating is the superpower all parents should learn, and we're going to cover that today.
That sounds amazing because I'm probably not great. I'm more of an escalator, not a de-escalator. Oh. So I think I'll have something to learn here. So like I guess let's maybe walk through an example of I don't know. Well, so I have a 12-year-old, 11-year-old, 7-year-old. You're at
14 and 11.
11.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like it kind of helps with all the ages, right?
All the ages, yeah. There's the techniques differ a little bit, right? Honestly, like even from newborn, de-escalating is a thing, right? Like I remember with both of our kids, the ability to get up and move, and whether it's rocking or walking or going outside, instantly there'd be a calming effect. Like when Justice was a little, like when she was newborn stage, and she cried and cried and cried because she'd sit around. If we weren't moving, she'd be upset. Instantly go outside, hold her tight, and then whether it's like hearing the vibrating of like my voice or chest, or just like the calmness of the outside, instantly stops crying. So energy is there whether it's a newborn or a teen,
right?
And it's what we're giving off or inviting them into that usually directs where it goes.
So I guess would you say redirection then is?
That's part of it. Yeah. Like some of the tips that we'll cover are trying to like reshape their focus. So like going for like if Justice is crying on the inside of our house and I pick her up, hold her close to my chest, there's a physical connection. And then we go outside and now I have a new stimuli. Whether she sees it or not, she's going to feel it. Everyone knows what that feels like. Mm-hmm. And it's a shift of focus internally, even if she's not fully cognizant of it at a comprehensive level at the newborn stage. Physiologically, she feels that. And so, yes, sometimes it's just let's gently or tactfully get this person off of their point, because at that point, they can't hear, they can't think clearly. They're certainly not going to absorb any of my lessons that I want to give them or your teachings. They're too high, right? So we'll use a scale of 1 to 10. And 10 is you're seeing red, steam's coming out your ears. You're not thinking anything but, kill or run or swing or something, right? Mm-hmm. Nothing should be happening at like actually above a 5. If we're going to do any learning or any kind of connecting, we got to think, how do we lower this down? Because they're not going to comprehend, they're not going to appreciate, they're not going to hear any of it if we can't both be below a 5.
I like that. That's because I feel like I obviously am a great lecturer and love to lecture my kids. And I think I have so much valuable stuff.
Yeah.
And it's, there's just no way to even get any point across.
No.
When you're, I mean, I don't want to hear anything when I'm above a 5.
Right. And that's what,
my kid.
Well, and that's how it works is like, we think if they only knew what we were about to teach them, they wouldn't be in trouble. They wouldn't be upset, and we'd all move fast. We'd move through this forward quickly, right? But that's not the way it works. We're at an emotionally escalated place, and most of the time we're ruminating on the same messaging over and over and over. I'm getting screwed over. Dad's unfair. Oh, he's lecturing me again. My sibling always gets off with this thing, and they're playing that without knowing it. They've got it looped. And then we come in and give them more shit on the top of that. Like, well, you should be and you have to or else, thinking that's going to like save them from their little cycle. But really all it does is make it worse. And then they're not listening to you. And so now your energy goes up, right? Because you try to like correct it, thinking that would like bring it all down. You pissed them off or missed the mark. And now they're not listening to you. Now your energy goes up. And now it's just like escalating like volcano that each person's like triggering.
All right, so I'm gonna give you a hypothetical.
Yeah.
A dad walks into a room and there's a 7-year-old who just wants to hear nothing. This has never happened before, of course.
Yeah.
This is a hypothetical. And at what point, so let's say something's already happened, it's escalated, right?
Yeah.
She's at a 10. And I guess how do you break through at the 10 level to even get them to a 5?
Totally.
Be like without physically, like you were saying when Justice was a baby, you could pick her up, take her outside, whatever. Yeah. Well, 7-year-old's she's a little bit bigger.
Yeah.
And so I guess, is it like you just wait it out and then try to wait for that entry, or what are your thoughts there?
If you have to wait it out, yes. Like if you're going to go in and, or if the environment doesn't allow for you to like enter into that space and you have to wait, okay. But I strongly believe that most kids, and I say most, like my guess would be like 90% or higher, but there'll be a fringe group that aren't going to respond to any of these tactics. But most kids will respond with kind of the right algorithm. Okay, and what's that? Safety, nonverbals, energy. I hear you, I see you, I'm with you. They feel like they're alone in this. They don't know this. They're not like cognitively thinking like I'm alone. No, but they're probably feeling that. And so like let them know you're not alone. We're on the same team. I don't like how you're doing it. You probably don't like the way I'm doing it, but we're on the same team and we're going to get through this together. You might not say any of that, but through a nonverbal, like, so you go in, your daughter is visibly and emotionally, you can tell she's at a 10, right? So I do a quick calculation, like, well, how open to touch is she? Some kids are, some kids aren't, right? When some people are upset, the last thing they want to do is be touched. Other people are very receptive to it. So I would say, is she open to touch? If she is, go strategically hug, squeeze, tap, like grab her toes, right? Like when Justice was smaller and she got upset when she didn't know how to self-regulate, I'd call it heart massage, which is just a fancy phrase for tickling. And I'd be like, oh boy, your heart is so hard. I feel so bad. We got to loosen it up. And then, and then she'd bust up laughing, right?
Right.
And then she'd kind of forget what she was so pissed about, right? Because that's the way it works. We can be, if I threw a water balloon at your face, when you said you're so upset, you wouldn't be upset over the same thing. You'd be reset. You might be mad at me now, but you wouldn't be mad at something else, right?
Yeah.
I reset her by tickling her. Now, they get older and older. They know my strategy. They're like, oh, don't pull it. You can't do that tickle stuff again. It still works, even though Justice is still 14. I can get her to laugh a little bit. And then just get her off the point, and then like you start to massage in like resolution. So if your daughter's open to touch,
which I think she is, by the way, 1 point for Libby. If you're out there, she always says you should probably just cuddle her and hold her first.
Yeah.
And like I think, yeah.
Save all the lessons, because you got to think we got to get below a 5 minimum. Right. Like the lower the number, the better the breakthrough, the better the teaching, the better connection. All that stuff is better the lower the number, which is your number and her number. It's not just her number, because if you're not below a 5, you're going to have a hard time connecting and communicating the right message. So you think, I need to be below a 5. I need to get her below a 5. And actually the goal is 0, where the both of you are fully present and at peace and ready to talk about whatever. If you have to sit there and hug her for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, so what? That's better than an hour-long escalated and then slowly ramped down, conflict
Yeah.
versus sit in it until you can feel the body relax, right? You're kind of absorbing and like pulling it out. Did you ever see The Green Mile?
Yeah.
When John Coffey, he breathes,
just pulls them
he
right out.
inhales the cancer out of the lady and all the little like gnats. It's like you're pulling her negative energy out, like pull it out, hug her, squeeze her, let her know like it's okay.
Yeah.
And then once she's down, then maybe what were we needed to talk about? Like, was there a thing? Because part of like being a good parent is modeling and achieving self-regulation, right? Sometimes the lesson that you're arguing over or that she's worked up about means nothing. Mm-hmm. Learning how to regulate herself as a human is incredibly valuable, right? Most people's conflicts in life are because of unregulated emotions. So modeling and teaching that is more important than the lecture, but most parents prioritize the lecture.
Right.
Versus the de-escalation and the emotional regulation. And then, not surprisingly, the kid doesn't absorb it and the conflict, and then there's a wedge in the relationship, and, fast forward, kid leaves the house yelling or something,
I would love to see a scoreboard on myself in the lectures I've given my kids where they're just like, Dad, this is pointless. Dad, this is pointless.
I've heard it before.
Please stop talking, Dad.
Yeah, just classic parent speak.
Yeah. Oh.
Right? You have to, if you're going to say the typical parent lecture, at least call it out. Be like, this is standard adult speak.
Yeah.
And I know it's not going to really resonate, but it's true.
But I'm going to say it anyway.
I said it to my daughter the other day about relationships. I'm like, I know I'm the old dad who sounds like he doesn't know anything, but teenage relationships are very difficult and they go up and down. They're very emotionally draining. And it's fun until it's not fun. But so touch is a big deal.
Yeah.
If the kid's not open to touch, just be close, but not like burst their bubble, their space bubble.
Right.
Right. Another creative way to de-escalate, you can use humor as long as the kid doesn't get pissed. You can do weird stuff that works really well. Like if the kids are fighting, let's say, and they're not listening to you, and you can't get them to stop fighting. Like throw something at them. Like if you had some marshmallows, you throw marshmallows at them. If you throw little pebbles, and be like, "Oh, I thought we were playing a game." Like who could hit Tyler in the head with a rock? And they're like, what? Like it's just confuses them.
Just enough.
Right? It's makes them pause and be a little bit less pissed over here and a little bit more open to something else. And then once you've so it's getting scale, right? Mm-hmm. They were at an 8, pebble hits Tyler in the forehead and you're like, yes. I thought we were playing a game of how to de-escalate you guys. Yeah. And I'm out of 6 now, you know? And it's funny and weird and they don't get it. But now you've paused and be like, what are you guys playing? Well, now they're going to want to argue again. Mm-hmm. Right. So you say, I thought you were playing a game. Like, do we have to argue? Now the lecture is don't treat your brother that way. The stereotypical parent speak, which doesn't usually work. Right. But what's more interesting is ask them a question and then roll with it. Not a detective who's trying to find out who's guilty. That's another common error that parents get stuck in is who started this.
Who done it?
Yeah, because we're going to figure it out and someone's going to suffer. Mm-hmm. Again, that's not necessarily the best point always. If you can teach them how to resolve conflict, imagine how much better they are as adults in the workplace or with a partner or the friend or their kids. Yeah, being able to resolve conflict and de-escalate themselves and someone else is way more valuable than the generic lame lecture you're going to fight for in that situation.
Well, I love this idea now of entering into the room or the space. You and I have talked about mindfulness. Well, you've gotten me kind of into mindfulness, so we'll talk about that later. Yeah. But I can just sort of view that as sort of going into that space and sort of stepping outside yourself and your kid, right? And just watching as an observer and be like, what are they at? Oh, they're at an 8, they're at a 9, or they being one of them is me, right? Yeah. So let's get that guy down to a 5. Let's get, my daughter down to a 5, and just kind of work to just sort of visualize it from that sort of outside perspective, because I think I would say for me, I'm just so triggered, maybe is the word.
Yeah.
And then I say it out loud. I say, I'm getting triggered. and then it just all goes crazy.
Yeah. Well, that's the way the mind works. It doesn't matter whether you're in traffic or you're at home with your kids or it's a conflict with Libby. Once your mind has fully been swept up into the current of thought, and that thought is threatening, it's wrong, it creates insecurity or some violation of your moral code, someone's like done this wrong thing, and we attach to that emotion, it's difficult to be mindful, it's difficult to be objective, it's certainly difficult to be emotionally regulated because we are now in the current of this strong river of emotion and thought that we're trying to win and force our way out of it versus like just pull back, stop. You've over-attached to the thought that you need to control this. Well, I'm tired and I need to go to bed. It's like, okay, but that's not going to work. Like, you have a right to be upset. You might be wrong if there was a court of child and parent that would hear your case. The judge might decide you're right. You should be able to yell and threaten and take away their stuff for the next week if they don't respond. But the real life is you're just messing up your evening. You're going to rile yourself up. The kids aren't listening. You're going to say something really stupid or extreme. Regret it probably. And they're like, God, Dad's like kind of an asshole. Like, he gets really mad and takes all our stuff from us, you know?
Right.
So the mindfulness concept, absolutely. I'll say that over and over and over and over and over again, because a mindful human generally doesn't make any mistakes because it doesn't make sense to make mistakes. Like, if you're really like thinking objectively about what to say and do next, you don't want to do a dumb thing.
Right.
It doesn't make any sense. We generally we make mistakes when we're not objective. We're over attached to thoughts and feelings. And then we're thinking, our creativity shrinks, our patience shrinks, and now we're just reaction mode. And then we're arguing with a kid.
Right.
Who's 5 or 10 or 15, and we're kind of acting like them, which happens a lot in my office. You know, I'm like, no wonder you guys are here. You're both acting like the same age. Yeah. And I don't want to call the parent out in the situation fully, but I'm like, you're never going to this isn't going to ever work. Your kid's laughing inside of you because you're acting like a teenager.
Right.
Now, when they're 5 and 10, they don't really know that. But when they get to those teenagers, they're able to be like, no, my mom, my dad, they're crazy. They're idiots. They are childish. The younger, they just are angry because we're like threatening their stuff. But, going back to your 7-year-old, you're thinking, how do I de-escalate myself and her? So if you went in and let's go, she's in her room, let's say.
Yeah,
let's paint the scene. Mm-hmm. On a bed, on a chair, on the ground,
floor.
On the floor. Perfect.
Maybe kicking.
Perfect.
Maybe just like body out of control. It's just taking
over,
I
love
right?
it.
And
I love
it. It's just like, I think the definition of a 10, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So you'd go in and immediately, as soon as you cross the threshold of the room, you're on your stomach and you're a serpent.
Right.
Or a friendly snake. She's no longer the center of attention because now Dad's doing weird shit on the floor,
right.
like a snake, right?
Yeah.
And then you just whether you make a little noise, or you just grab her toe, and you're being weird intentionally, and it makes it really hard for her to continue to be mad because now Dad's doing something weird too.
Yeah.
And then you'd say, "Oh, what's this?" And then you squeeze her foot, and you're like, "Oh, this is a nice foot."
And then now the only thing I would wonder there is if, like you said, the humor thing. I think we have, tried that in the past, and I think that sometimes that can trigger her too.
Yeah.
Right. So I think finding that balance probably between is this too humorous? Oh, did I just piss her off? Or it's just weird enough for her to be
if you don't feel really confident you can make her laugh.
Yeah.
Then don't do a funny thing.
Right.
Then you just, and if she's open to touch, you just hold her. Mm-hmm. Hold her hand, give her a full body hug. Yeah. It doesn't really matter as long as there's enough connection to just say, I got you. Mm-hmm. You can obviously tell she's emotionally unregulated and she just needs someone to let her know she's going to be okay. Mm-hmm. And that's through nonverbals. I'm your dad. I got you. You're okay.
So I think maybe that de-escalation or you said bring it down to 5 or less with nonverbals maybe is a big key.
Yeah, it's huge. 90% of communication isn't even the words.
Right.
It's like 65, 75 is nonverbal. 20, 25 tone, and then the rest is the words. So even like...
Oh, and then 25 tone, so we're talking like 5-10% is words.
The smallest. Yeah.
That's crazy.
Like actually hardly anything, although most parents prioritize the lecture.
Right. So stupid.
If you just like how quickly you speak, how softly your voice is, right? Imagining that you were trying to gift them peace, and all you could do was like use your body and your voice.
Right.
Right? You would be like exuding like, I want you to be okay. I want to be okay. Like, we're both better when we're okay. Let's just sit in this, like, you wouldn't say this because it sounds cheesy, but like, we're going to sit in this safe space.
Yeah.
Because why not? Like, we're in our home. No one's shooting at us.
Mm-hmm.
There's food in the fridge. The heat works. Like, we got clothes. Like, we're okay.
Yeah.
Right? And that's not just like with a 7-year-old. That's like all the time, and not even, and with some adults, like it's going to be okay. Because what's happened? They've attached to some probably horrible concept in their mind about their life being out of control, or everyone's being in control of their life, and they don't like where it's going, so they're resisting. And then someone saying, it's going to be okay. Now, that doesn't mean you know the future, or you know what's going to happen tomorrow. But right then and there, they are okay. Like, the reality is your daughter's perfectly fine in her physical world. Mm-hmm. She's reacting to her emotional world, which is very imaginative, right? That we all get wrapped up in. And she's full blown down the river of this imaginary, like, thinking. And her body's like twisting and she's shaking, you know, which is funny.
Right.
And frustrating, all the above, right? You're like, what the hell are you doing? And oh my gosh.
Well, and
like,
the worst part is that her 2 older brothers then get tickled by it, right? And she'll try to do something, and it's funny, and then Libby's laughing, and we're all laughing, and it's like, we promise we're not laughing at you, but you know that's just how families go.
Yeah, I know,
but,
I know.
And
yeah, in that case, like, having the boys out of there is key.
Yeah,
like, this would just be you or just Libby hugging her if she's open to it, and you sit in that space, you hug her as long as it takes until you can kind of like feel her body relax, which she'll be able to feel. It's crazy how interconnected it all is. It's not like, well, your body is here, but then your emotions are here and your mind's here. Like, no, it's all happening in the same place, right? When she finally accepts the fact that you got her back, and that she's safe and she's going to be okay, you'll feel her body like communicate that. And then,
so I guess, so that's good. So then you can feel that's probably the best way to realize that they're at a 5 or less.
Yeah.
So you can do a lot of this whole first step non-verbally.
Yeah.
Just over. Yeah.
Yeah. And let's say they're not open to touch. Mm-hmm. Being close to her and saying, I'm here. And I want to be here until like you feel okay, or till we're okay. Mm-hmm. And that's it. Like, the key is to not talk a lot.
Right.
Because talking is cognitive, and she's in an emotionally charged place. She's in kind of like lost in her body. And then you're talking to her head, and it's not going in. Mm-hmm. But if your voice just says nothing, right? But it's calm. And it's like, I got you. Again, 90% of it's not even the words. It's like a safe message that's like communicates warmth. Then she knows it's okay to like sit in that space. She doesn't have to resist whatever she felt like she was trying to resist. You know, someone trying to control her, or she felt out of control, or all the above. And then like, she doesn't like the fact that she doesn't have that control. You're basically saying, without saying it, you don't need control. Like, you're fine.
Right.
You can breathe. You're right here. I'm your dad. You're safe. Like, everything's going to be fine. You don't need to control the things you think you need to control. But you don't say any of that. You just like sit there with it. And then when she finally like gets, drops below a 5, you're like, can I get you some water? Do you want anything to drink? Are you hungry?
Right.
Tons and tons and tons and tons of conflicts at all ages are because of people who are hangry.
Hungry, yeah, I was going to say.
Like,
hangry
tired,
base. Yeah.
Tired and hungry, you're like, everyone's worse off, right? We're emotionally unregulated, and it's exaggerated. So Maybe she's tired. Maybe she's hungry. Maybe she needs something to drink. You're buying more time to just like get her further away from that epicenter of her explosion, to the point where you can like, maybe there's some dots to connect, maybe not. Like sometimes there's no great lesson about the conflict, but the great lesson is how to emotionally regulate. And like, I'm your dad, I got your back is a wonderful, wonderful lesson that too many parents don't see the value in. They are in lecture mode, and they fail to see like those things are always going to happen. But what you could teach is how to regulate and walk through that, and let them know that they're okay in it with you. That's a more valuable lesson than don't hit your brother in the face.
Right.
She already knew that. That's not even interesting. Or, don't steal, or don't talk to your mom that way. That stuff's not interesting. It's a given. They're emotionally worked up. Bring them down, connect with them, then review it if you're confused at all about whether they're confused. Like, I'm just checking in. Like, do you think it is okay that you hit your brother in the face? Well, no. Oh, whew. Okay, good. We're on the same page. Or, well, it depends on what he did. Well, you could be right, I guess. What do you mean? But
so maybe that first thing then, so after you get them down to a 5 or less, right? And then you want to kind of bridge that gap for the conversation. Are you basically saying like throw the ball in their court, like ask them a question as opposed to, like you said, that don't come in as like the cross-examiner, like who done it type deal.
Yeah.
I guess, like what's like that next step of that sort of that verbal.
Yeah. If you can validate their experience.
Yeah.
Which is hard. It's hard for parents to validate. It's hard for humans to validate if they don't agree with the other person's conclusions. Mm-hmm. But you're not really saying you agree with their conclusions. You're just trying to understand their experience and let them know you understand their experience.
Right.
So you're not approving of their opinion or their outcome or their behavior. You're de-escalating, and 2, you're helping them learn more about their experience. It's like, oh, so like, what would she say if she's calmed down and you asked her like, hey, I want to, you cast a vision. I want to understand what just happened for you, what that was like for you. It feels empowered now. Now she has a right to talk about her experience. Whether it's right or wrong, we'll get to later.
Right.
Right now, 1, we're de-escalating, and 2, we're teaching how to be self-aware. So you'd say, I'd like to hear more about your experience with that. Because I think it was different for you than it was for so-and-so. So what was that like? What happened? And again, age and maturity is going to impact like how self-aware they are and what they can really recount. But so let's say if you asked her like any kind of like open-ended question like that, how self-aware do you think she would be?
I would say very self-aware, but
so say what you'd think she would say if you asked her how she was doing or what that experience was like.
Well, I would say, typically, just because of the fact that her 2 older brothers are so close in age and have each other, right? And they have that, it's often, they left me out, or they didn't, understand my side of the thing, or it's kind of, she probably often feels this is them against me, right?
Yeah.
And type deal, which is valid for a 7-year-old, right?
For any human, if they really feel left out, right?
Yeah, right.
So most parents want to jump to the solution and skip over the connecting point where the bond occurs is they feel like you understand them. Mm-hmm. So you'd say, it sounds like you felt left out, and that in your attempt to plug in, you were rejected, which hurt, and you feel like this is a theme over and over again that you get left out of the play. Mm-hmm. And she says, yes, no, kind of, maybe, whatever, right? If she says yes, then you'd say, that makes me sad, or that's a bummer, or I know what that's like, or...
Just validating them.
You're just validating the experience. You're not even caught up on who did right or who did wrong.
Right.
It's not even interesting right now. It's her experience and connecting with it and helping her connect her own dots. Mm-hmm. This is what feeling rejected feels like, and this is what happens when I explode. And this is my dad helping me understand like all of this. Now that she's not saying that in her head, but it is being like cataloged that way. Mm-hmm. And then after she says that, and you'd validate, you could share an experience quick side note, you don't want to overshare your experiences.
She doesn't want to hear about like my 8th grade.
When I was in 8th grade, Timmy and Tommy, the sons of, tactfully, wisely self-disclose. But if it's not really connected to their experience, you're going to lose them again.
Right.
Right. So connect with hers, validate her experience. Again, gauging tension level, like still got to stay below 5. Hopefully it's dropping more and more.
Right.
When she gets closer to like, a 1 or a 0, then you can ask a more open-ended question of like, what would healthy behavior look like next time? Like who would you want to be in that situation if your brothers would do that again?
Right.
Because you can't control whether the brothers ever do that again, and life's going to do that to her, right? So you want to empower her and think creatively, what would you want to do differently next time if you were left out or feeling that way? And age and self-awareness, who knows what kind of response, but you really want her to take some kind of ownership and kind of go on record of how she wants to handle it next time.
Yeah.
And then be supportive of that.
That's great. Yeah, and I think she would really respond well. I would say we've done bits and pieces of that, and I guess now that you say it out loud and I, recollect back on those times, it was probably those times of touch and de-escalations and validation and stuff like that. And I think she's obviously completely big enough to feel those feelings, and rightfully so, So
yeah.
So does it do you feel like with you having an older daughter, right? At 14, do you feel like some of the tactics are a little bit different as they mature and get older?
But they're more like just graduated versions. Like I have to even be more on top of my game to be like how I say it, when we say nothing. When like the other night, like she had a really tough day and was feeling really emotional, and I knew the subject, and talking about it wasn't going to be helpful. And so I just hugged her for a long time. And there were tons of things I wanted to say.
Right.
All these lessons, right, that would make her feel better and learn and blah, blah, blah. But it wasn't available. I could feel like it's not the right time. Yeah. Right now, just feeling cared for was way better. And then, finally, like, get done hugging, and I just say, do you want to talk? I think she said no, but basically, like, well, if you do, I'm available. I just don't want you to have to talk about it if you don't want to.
So that was going to be my next question, was like, in that moment, could you sort of ever sense that she was like at a 5 or below, and you're just like, nope, not yet? Or just, maybe not a 7-year-old or a rational 5, but, a grown up, I'm not ready to talk, right? So do you just need to verbally ask that, or do you feel like there's any cues that you can pick up on that say, okay, now we're ready to talk, or ready to take that next step? Because that one I feel like is nuanced and hard. Like,
I think that
just
is
in
and
relationships. With my wife, it's like I don't always know when those perfect.
Well, the less
are,
emotionally escalated we are, the more perceptive we can be. The more emotionally escalated we are, the more defensive and closed off we are. Yeah. So when we're in a fight with our partner, it's us. It's not like our child that we're trying to care for. Mm-hmm. It's our ego. It's right and wrong. It's good or bad. And they're like violated some, of our rights or whatever. And so we're emotionally plugged into that and triggered. With our kid, unless they're insulting us, which we can get to for sure, because a lot of kids get to the point where they're like, fuck off.
Go after Dad. You suck.
Obviously it happens. But when it's not you, it's your child and their emotional state, it's easier to be perceiving or perceptive of their level, their scale. And I have so much history and practice working with kids. Like when you said that, I instantly thought of this scene when I worked in this residential treatment facility for teens. this kid ran away from the property. Was away for I don't know how many days, pretty successful, like rummaging through the streets, came back, was like high on something. We couldn't find out. I'm like, we got to search him because he can't like have a kid bring drugs back in.
Right.
But we were a non-restraint facility. And so all I could use was energy and questions. So I'm like, we're in the bathroom on the boys' dorm, which is as disgusting as you think it would be. Mm-hmm. I'm sitting on the floor because I want to communicate safety. And we're talking for 20 minutes
Just went
at least.
straight down the floor, huh?
Yeah, right where all the pee is. I wanted to communicate, like, I'm not here to, like, be your warden. I just got to keep you and other people safe. Mm-hmm. And I need to be able to, like, search what you have on you, right? And so it was like, I feel like I'm negotiating with a terrorist. And so it was like, well, we got to search you though, man. Like, it's just the way it is. Like, it's not, I wish it wouldn't have to be that way, but I care about you and I care about everybody else in here. So 15, 20 minutes go by and I could just sense that he was like softened up enough to say, how about we have Phil come in, and you trust Phil, you like Phil. How about Phil goes through your stuff and we'll get out of here and it can be just the two of you. And I don't even know if he said yes, but I was like, Phil, come on in. And I left. I took the other guy with me, and boom, they went right in, grabbed his backpack. Phil and the kid went through his stuff, found a little stash of weed here and there, and it worked well. But it was this like super intuitive, nuanced thing that I wouldn't want to put a lot of parents trying to like detect that.
Be like, are you there or no? Is this a 5, 5.5? Did you get there yet?
Yeah, are you dropping? Yeah. So you better to ask. Mm-hmm. If you'd like to talk, you don't want to pressure them, right? Like, what are you feeling? Do you want to talk to me? Mm-hmm. Like, no one needs that direct of a question.
Right.
Open-ended and floated out there.
Yeah.
Soft, right? It's like a warm delivery. It's like, if you would like to talk, I'm available. I want to be supportive, but on your timeline. Mm-hmm. Most parents are trying to control the situation all the time, even like how the kid talks, when the kid talks.
Right.
And it doesn't work very well. It's a lopsided conversation. You're not going to get full authenticity. You're getting a pressurized conversation with the kid.
Yeah. I just wonder too, you may know this, I'm kind of a process guy. I think Libby loves that I'm a process guy, I'm pretty sure. She's like, or I'll geek out about the process. I'm like, well, what's our process here? Let's follow the process, guys.
Shut up, Dan.
Yeah. So, I'm just thinking, I was like, is there, what do you think it'd ever be worth it to then communicate this whole process to your kids and be like, let's get to a 5. We all know about, I want to beat a 5, you want to beat a 5, whatever. Or is that just too much?
It's too much because
it's just too much, right?
It's too analytical.
Yeah.
And they're emotional. And no matter how helpful it is, they're gonna tell you to shove it.
Yeah.
Right. You just go be it.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to talk about it because most people don't want to talk about if they're not in the right place emotionally. If they're below a 5, they have tolerance. They have at least more tolerance and more patience, more acceptance. Above a 5, everything tends to feel irritating, even if it's like helpful, even if it's right. It's not received well when they're like not the right emotional place. So a lot of it's like timing, and then you could say manipulating is a bad word, but I would say it depends on how you do it, right? If I'm going to manipulate someone for their good, I would say I'm gifting them. Mm-hmm. I am getting something out of it because it makes me happy to see them in a better place. So if I can influence their emotional state by sitting, walking, singing, touching, being silly, validating, empathizing, getting them something to drink, getting something to eat, caring for them to bring them down, we're all going to be better off if I can like lower that. And I wouldn't want to automate that or systemize that,
right? Use
the process, because you're not going to be as creative, intuitive when you're locked into your process as you are like read them. And if you don't know, shut up and just sit there. Yeah. That's better. That's better than forcing anything. Like it's kind to sit there next to someone. Like you don't even have to say anything. Mm-hmm. So I can appreciate the desire to want to like automate it,
Thank you. I appreciate that.
But the second you do it, you fuck it up, Dan. The second you do it, it feels inauthentic and it feels like they're being worked.
Right.
Versus cared for.
Right.
It's a caring thing, even though it might have data points or like step 1, step 2. If you make it that, it feels hollow and mechanical. And the whole idea of this is like de-escalating with your energy, not with threat or critical thinking.
Yeah.
That avenue is not available right then.
I would assume it goes without saying bribing is probably not a good. Because I've seen some times where parents are like, whether in a restaurant or a public place, right, and it, little Susie's going nuts over the, whatever. Just here's an iPad, or do you want to watch a show, or do you want to do this or that, or whatever, right? And it's like, is that so?
It's the worst.
Actually, that's a great question. Like, how do you de-escalate in public?
Yeah.
Just
my gosh. So we were in Disneyland last year. Oh my gosh. Justice and Isaiah, heads up.
Yeah.
We were in Disneyland. We're in Space Mountain in line. All the lines are so long. This one was supposed to be shorter because they had it shut down. They opened back up, blah, blah, blah. They got in some conflict. I don't even know what about. It was just the three of us. And Isaiah spit a loogie right in Justice's face. We're in the maze. Yeah. There's like 100 people all around, right?
There's no way.
And I don't. So what do? I grabbed his arm and squeezed the shit out of it, and I said, "Absolutely not. I don't care what your sister did. We're not spitting in anyone's face."
Yeah.
And I moved him over to the side, and I put myself between the two of them, and she was obviously livid. Right. And I just said, "I'm sorry. That's not right. We'll take care of it." And then I realized, we're not going to get into it in line. We don't have the time. Well, we do have probably an hour in line. But we didn't have the space to do it.
Right.
And so I just let my authority, which I don't use all the time or very often actually, just say, "We're not doing this. And you're going to stand there and I'm going to hold your arm. When you move hard, I'm going to squeeze it and you're going to cry." Mm-hmm. Because you obviously have shown that you can't regulate yourself and you need limits. And so we waited it out. And that was it. It never got any worse. Isaiah apologized. I don't know what it was over. I forget.
Right.
But it was it was a long day. It was hot. They were tired. No one likes to be in line and so those environmental factors create a lot of tension, and he couldn't handle it. And he got triggered by something and obviously did the wrong thing. So there are situations where you can't just sit there and hold them. Right. But if he hadn't spit in her face and they were just upset, and I have enough influence with both of my kids where I wouldn't need to do this. But let's say you had a kid that was goes rogue often. I'd consider taking a knee and have them take a knee if you could. If not, just get on a knee and speak to them and say, "Hey, it's really important that you figure this out right now." Mm-hmm. Bribing is I don't know if it's the worst, but let's just call it the worst. Yeah. Don't bribe. You are creating enabling this little monster.
Right.
And it just feeds the monster more and more, and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. They need to learn how to hear no. They need to handle limits. That's the world that we live in.
Right.
They need to be able to handle that. And you've got to teach them as a parent. You don't rescue them to make you feel good just because it's annoying. You're kicking the can down the road and the can becomes a gigantic monster, right? Mm-hmm. So never bribe in that sense. I think incentivizing them in life and other areas works fine. Mm-hmm. But to bribe them out of a bad mood, absolutely not. I see parents... Full disclaimer, this podcast, I'm going to have tons of opinions, and some people might not like it, which I totally get. But I've been doing this for a long time. I had wonderful parents myself, so I got a lot of good parenting examples. If you got a little terror with you and you're at a store and you don't do anything about it, it is your fault.
Right.
I don't care what's going on with the kid. Take the kid outside, put them in the car. Don't give them an audience. Don't empower their tantrums. Like, they need to know that the world they live in is not about them. They're a wonderful part of it, but it doesn't center around them. And I can hardly stand like parents that like let their kid just scream at a checkout, like they can't do anything about it, or at a restaurant, or like, well, this is my kid. Like, no, you take the kid, you put him in the car, and you leave him there, right? Make them realize who's in control. I'm not always advocating for like beating down a kid's spirit. But when a kid is proven to be out of control, they clearly have lost the boundaries. The parents have lost the guardrails, and they need to like revisit those and say like, this is the world you live in. So no bribing at all.
I think I heard the other day on the whole boundaries deal is that, when you set those boundaries as a parent, then it's up to the parent to say, these are the actions I'm going to take as a parent when these boundaries are crossed. So there's really no thing that the kid has to do. It's not on them. It's just they either stay within the boundary or they don't. But once they go outside, they know that the parents are going to take certain action, right? And whether it's just, okay, I have to actually pick you up and remove you from the store,
right?
Put you in the car, whatever it may be, right?
One of my favorite parenting books when we had newborns was Bringing Up Baby. And the author, who was American, married a British gentleman and lived in France and raised.
Oh, right.
I think they raised. I don't know if they raised two, but the first book was about their first one. She said the French call it the cadre, which is like corral, and basically everything within the corral you say yes to, but it's a hard no. Anything that crosses that corral line. And so like, to spit in your sister's face or to like throw this at someone, you're like, no, absolutely not. We don't throw a tantrum. Like, this is done. And it's not to punish or penalize them. It's to let them know what healthy boundaries are and what safety looks like. And that you would do the same for them, that you're doing for their sibling or you're doing for someone else. It's just a reassuring like trust factor that like, if you do this, I'm for sure going to do this. So it's your choice. I would love for you to like make this a great afternoon, but if you don't do that, here's what's going to happen, right? Mm-hmm. Another parenting philosophy that's been good to follow over the years is love and logic. And the idea behind that is empowering the kid with options, even though the options tend to be our favor. But it's up to you. Like, you can do that. If you hit your sister again, this is what's going to happen, but it's your choice. Mm-hmm. Right? And then let's say they hit the sister in the face. It's like, oh, well, you chose this. Here's what's going to happen, right? I'm going to take you here and blah, blah, blah.
Right.
But it's when we are reacting to their energy that our parenting shifts to like bad ideas like bribing or threatening. It's like we are so irritated and so reactive to their negative energy that we're not even thinking creatively, and we're not big enough to absorb their stuff. We're now like a player in this whole scene, like grabbing a sword or a threat or a motivator, versus like just be the adult. Tell them what's up. Tell them you love them. Like, we're going to get through this, but not if you're going to do this, buddy. Like, we're going to leave immediately, or you're going to be by yourself the rest of the night if this is how you want to behave. But this could be a fun time. Like, do you just need 5 minutes? Do you need a breather? What's going on?
Right.
They could have just like called someone an asshole, right? Did the super wrong thing. My energy is going to be loving, but firm. Like, and kids need to know that parents can be firm, but your firm doesn't need to be jerk, right? That's the key. It's like, you could be like, my voice is soft, like the cadence is nice. And I could say, if you hit your sister again, we're leaving Disneyland for the whole day, and I'm going to actually leave you at the house and coming back with your sister. And we're going to be here all afternoon without you, which is not what I want.
Right.
You'll be sad. I'll be sad. We'll be bummed forever that's how our Disneyland experience goes. But you've got to figure this out. You can't treat her this way.
Yeah.
The reaction in us, so go back to that 1 to 10, is so central for us being good parents. Like, and being the pretty good parent requires us to be really mindful of what are we reacting to. And we're trying to control their stuff because we don't like how it's making us feel. We're generally not thinking as wisely as we need to. And we're reacting unnecessarily. So that's why your example of the mindfulness parent walking into that scene, like, well, hold on, there's the dad, and there's the kid. Oh, wow, dad's really upset. Oh, the kid's upset too. Well, I think the dad's more upset than the kid. And you're like, well, okay, dad.
He can't control his emotions. Look at him. Look at him over there.
What a fool. No, you would want to take some deep breaths.
Yeah.
Right? And then you would say, a good de-escalator for anyone is to like speak, like cast a vision of how you would like things to go. Right? So you'd say, I would love it if we could have a respectful, understanding conversation right now. And I know that's like a little too adult speak for like some kids.
Right.
But modify it a little bit and say, I don't want to fight. I want you to feel good. I want to feel good. But we obviously have something here that needs to be addressed, right? That's just reasonable. Most parents aren't reasonable because they got emotionally triggered. They're worried about this path their kid might be on. They're bothered by their day. They're distracted by their partner. They're distracted by work. Like, they're tired. And they're just irritated that their kid's not doing what the kid's supposed to do. But that's actually not wise. Like, well, the kid doesn't know that. Mm-hmm. They got their own day. They had their own problems with their friends. They're worried about their own future, whether that future is tonight or tomorrow or the team they might want to try to make tomorrow. Mm-hmm. They have their own worries that we fail to calculate and just assume like they have it easy and so they shouldn't be making these decisions. But that's not how the human brain works. The human brain's not like, well, I'm only 7 and I only have 7-year-old problems.
Right.
The brain's just like stress, danger, threat, don't like it, fight it, resist, danger, dad's coming in, oh, he's mad, I'll show him mad.
Right.
Look at me throw my fit. Watch, he can't control this. And you're like, well, yes, I can. Mm-hmm. And, then wise dad's like, no, buddy, stop. Lay on the ground, deep breaths, just hug her.
Yeah.
Wait her out. Love her out.
Yeah.
No,
it's fantastic. Can't wait for the next little blow up in the house, Joshua. Just
got new dads here.
We got de-escalation.
De-escalation. Dan is here.
De-escalation.
I love it.
Danny de-escalation
like
is in the
costume.
house. Boy, yeah, they're gonna
Libby
love that one.
Brings in. We need some de-escalation.
She's gonna really love that one. Yeah.
As long as you don't process the hell out of it.
Yeah. Right.
Upset Libby.
Yeah. No, that's great, man.
Yeah,
really.
So you
can let's
no
do
touch.
Quick takeaways. Quick.
Yeah, if they're open to touch, definitely touch. Like again, I tickled my daughter. I could still tickle her now. I don't get as much benefit, but definitely loving, warm touch. You're okay. We're okay. I love you. We're gonna get through this. Use your energy more than your words. Your words are complicated, and you're likely to be misunderstood if you're like most humans. Right. Where touch and calm space is hard to mess up. Like you can mess that up too, but it's harder. Validate. Okay. So takeaways, touch when it's available, humor when it's available, weird, funny ways to reset them when it's available. If that only makes them worse, don't do it. Right. But if you can get them to laugh and then you can reset and revisit a new road, go for it.
And this is all in with a goal to get them to 5.
Yes,
you and them to a 5.
It's all de-escalation.
Okay.
Right. This isn't your lecture point.
Right.
You may not need to lecture. Who knows?
Right.
It might be uninteresting. And I can't say that enough. The good parenting sometimes is this little storm. It isn't the lecture that was the driver for it.
Right.
And most parents fail this. They prioritize the catalyst subject, and then miss the real important emotional deregulation and conflict resolution part of it. Right? That doesn't mean there aren't important lessons that are catalysts that need to be revisited. Right? Oh, you stole this from your friend, and you're upset now. Well, we got 2 subjects. We're going to de-escalate you here because this is how you feel. And then we're going to come back to like stealing from your friend because that's not okay.
Right.
So to de-escalate, check yourself before you wreck yourself.
There you go.
Right. Get below a 5. Get your kid below a 5. Touch when it's available. Humor when it's available. Funny, weird. Use your space. Talk slowly, calmly, warmly. Don't bribe them. Don't get desperate. Don't feel like you have to control it.
Yeah, don't give in.
Don't give in just because you're uncomfortable in the conflict.
Mm-hmm.
Like you want them to be able to walk through this. Like you've got to show them how to walk through it.
Yeah.
And then when you get done and it's been fully down to a 0, you come back around and be like, hey, I'm proud of how you handled yourself. That was encouraging to know that we could get through that the other day. I feel like you took good responsibility, or, something that just puts like a nice period at the end of it. Whenever, if it's like a day or 2 later, that won't expire. And it will reassure them like they're learning something and that you're proud of them.
Yeah. So, I mean, is that when, and maybe we save this for another episode, but that sort of teaching moment, right? If you feel like there's a huge lesson to be learned there, like, can that wait the next day, 2 days later? It should
usually wait.
Yeah.
Again, if they're at a 0 and if they're not asleep
mm-hmm.
or exhausted, then I would say start with a good question.
Right.
Hey, what have you learned through all this today? If you want to make it super easy for them to participate in, say, hey, is there anything you feel like I could do differently next time? That doesn't mean you're going to implement it. It might not be wise. But if it is, great. And they feel like they're being respected and invited into like a growing conversation versus it just being top down, like I'm the adult, you're the dumb kid. What have you learned?
Right.
What have we both learned? Because something I learned about myself today, or something I learned or was reminded of, is how easy it is for us to feel left out and how bad that can hurt.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I forget sometimes that like that's like your world, and I'd like to be more understanding of that.
Yeah.
And, and then what have you learned from all of this, right? So either you set the example of what it looks like to be humble and vulnerable, or ask them what you could do, which neutralizes the ownership for them, makes it easier. And then come back to, if they still haven't offered their own lesson, be like, what did you learn today about all of this? And keep it real broad on the front end so that they might go deeper on their own. If they don't, they keep it super shallow and they keep pointing fingers. It's okay to pry a little bit to see, like, really, that's like all you've learned? Like, don't be around your brother.
Yeah.
Like, is there not like anything you would do differently if you could next time?
Yeah.
But revisit that lecture. And it's not a lecture, it's a lesson. It's one of the lessons. The previous lesson was how to regulate and de-escalate and resolve conflict. The second might be what happened and what would you do differently next time.
Yeah.
But again, don't prioritize that one. It might be just as important, but don't make it the most important. Forget the skill set they need to like emotionally regulate and resolve conflict.
I feel just way more equipped now, Joshua.
You feel like you're at a 1 or a 0?
I'm like a 0.5 right now. Yeah. No, I mean, it's exciting, and I think that I don't know. I mean, I never got there's obviously a million books out there and stuff like that, but I never really got a handbook to be a parent, right?
Yeah.
And it's like these things get thrown at you.
I know.
And you just go at them and stuff, and so.
That's why I love that we're doing this, because I'll say some statements that I think some people don't like to hear, maybe sometimes, but it doesn't have to be complicated.
Right.
I would love for this to act as a handbook. Not that I know everything, but almost 50 years old and have worked with people professionally for 20 some years. Tons of teens, tons of parents, have my own kids. I had great parents, still have great parents. I want to be a resource, and it doesn't have to be complicated, right? Like, we've talked about this a ton. If we could just own the day,
right?
Like, just be a good parent today. Just be a pretty good parent.
Pretty good parent.
Like, your kids will love you for it, and we're creating like a better world with like better parents just today. Like, you don't need to worry about a year from now.
Mm-hmm.
You're guessing today. Like, be nicer. Ask good questions, de-escalate yourself, and you're already like being a pretty good parent.
I can just only imagine just in my house, just simply de-escalating, like that would do a world of difference, right? Like there doesn't even need to be these million other things after that. It's just, no, that would be great. Let's just de-escalate. And
less conflict, right?
Keep rolling.
I know.
Yeah.
Few people complain about a life that doesn't have a lot of conflict.
Yeah.
Like that's really where the uneasiness of life is,
Yeah.
right? So if we're creating and equipping parents to regulate themselves and then help regulate their children to like low levels, everyone's going to have a better home.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. Well, it's great stuff, Josh.
Yeah.
Love it. It's fantastic. And
Me too, man.
yeah. Well, thank you,
Thank
Josh.
you.
Thank you, listeners, for the maiden voyage of the Pretty Good Parent. Yeah.